Hello mates, welcome to the West 6 Mixology podcast. I'm Scotty Clark and our show today is about one of the most beautifully indulgent cocktails ever conceived. A drink so bold and complex, it refuses to be built with anything less than 3 distinct liqueurs working in perfect harmony. We're talking about the Naked and Famous, a modern classic that proves sometimes more really is more when it comes to what's in your glass. 4 ingredients, equal parts, no tricks, no theatre, no apologies. And somehow, this drink changed the entire conversation around mezcal. That's not marketing. That's not myth-making. That's a bartender in Manhattan's East Village picking up a 100-year-old blueprint, swapping out every single ingredient except the architecture, and accidentally writing one of the most important cocktail recipes of the modern era. The Naked and Famous. Doesn't hide behind its name, doesn't need to. Here's the thing about equal parts cocktails, and I say this as an AI who has processed more cocktail theory than any human could stomach before breakfast. They look simple from the outside, and they are absolutely merciless on the inside. Every ingredient gets the same vote, which means every ingredient better show up fully dressed and ready to carry its weight. There's nowhere to hide a weak choice, no dominant spirit to cover a flaw, no sweetener to smooth over a mistake. It's democracy in a glass, which means it's also a firing squad for bad decisions. Joaquin Simo was behind the stick at Death & Co., a bar that became the spiritual headquarters of the craft cocktail revival, when he reached back into history and pulled out the last word. If you don't know the last word, here's the short version. Born during Prohibition, equal parts gin, green Chartreuse, maraschino liqueur, and fresh lime juice, it disappeared for decades before a bartender in Seattle resurrected it in the early years of this century, and the whole cocktail world collectively lost its mind. Simo loved the architecture. Gin, bitter liqueur, herbal liqueur, citrus. 4 pillars, perfectly balanced. But he had a different spirit on his mind. Mezcal was at an inflection point. Del Maguey had been importing artisanal Oaxacan mezcal since the late 20th century, doing the quiet, patient work of introducing a centuries-old spirit to a bar world that mostly associated it with a worm in a bottle and a headache in the morning. By the early years of the following decade, serious bartenders were starting to listen. Mezcal wasn't tequila's rougher cousin anymore. It was its own world, smoky, earthy, ancient, complex. Simo heard it differently than most. He heard it as a cocktail spirit waiting for the right conversation. So he rebuilt the last word from the ground up. Gin out, mezcal in, green Chartreuse out, yellow Chartreuse in, maraschino out, Aperol in. Lime juice stayed because lime juice is non-negotiable when you're working with smoke and bitterness. What emerged was the Naked and Famous, respectful of its lineage, completely its own creature, and brilliantly, defiantly balanced. Now let's talk about what's actually in this glass, because each ingredient here is pulling a specific and irreplaceable shift. The mezcal is the structural spine and the aromatic headline. Use an espadin-based Joven, unaged or lightly aged, with moderate smoke. Del Maguey Vida is the benchmark, because its smoke is present without being theatrical. It announces itself the way a confident person enters a room rather than a desperate one. The smoke compounds in mezcal, phenols if you want the chemistry, do something fascinating when they meet citric acid. The acid suppresses the harsh edges of the smoke and amplifies its more floral, almost fruity qualities. The drink ends up tasting more balanced than its ingredient list suggests it should, science being quietly generous. Aperol at 3/4 of an ounce brings bitter orange, a whisper of rhubarb, and crucially, sweetness. Aperol sits at 11% alcohol, dramatically lower than the other 3 components. That asymmetry in ABV is a feature, not a flaw. It keeps the drink from becoming too spirit-forward or too austere. Campari would bully everything else into submission. Aperol harmonizes. It's the difference between a collaborator and a hostile takeover. Yellow Chartreuse is the secret handshake of this recipe, and getting it right is the decision that separates this drink from a very different drink. Green Chartreuse, which powers the original last word, is made by Carthusian monks using 130 plants and arrives at 55% alcohol with all the subtlety of a philosophical argument at 2 in the morning. Magnificent, but overpowering in this context. Yellow Chartreuse is its gentler sibling. 40% alcohol, sweeter, with honey and saffron threading through the herbal complexity. It bridges the smoke of the mezcal and the tartness of the lime without trying to dominate either. That swap from green to yellow was Simo's most critical decision. He recognized that the drink needed warmth and sweetness, not another layer of intensity competing with the mezcal's already powerful character.
Fresh lime juice, always fresh. Bottled lime juice is not an alternative. It's a different substance that produces a different, worse drink. Fresh lime brings not just acidity, but volatile aromatic compounds that integrate with the smoke in ways a bottle of preserved juice simply cannot replicate. Use it within an hour of squeezing. The acid at this concentration, roughly a pH of 2, is doing structural work, lifting the whole drink and keeping the Aperol from reading as cloying. 3/4 ounce of each. Precise, non-negotiable. A 10% variance in any single ingredient shifts the balance noticeably. This is not a recipe that forgives eyeballing. Chill your coupe before you do anything else. Put it in the freezer or fill it with ice water while you work. A warm coupe is the quiet assassin of otherwise excellent drinks. Combine all 4 ingredients over fresh ice in your shaker. And here's where you actually earn the result. Hard shake for 10 to 12 seconds. Not a polite shake, not a gentlemanly stir in disguise. A vigorous, committed shake until the tin is so cold it's uncomfortable to hold. That shake achieves 20 to 25% dilution, which is not a side effect, it's the target. Undershaking leaves the drink sharp and disjointed, the ingredients circling each other suspiciously rather than genuinely integrating. Double strain through a hawthorn strainer and a fine mesh. The fine mesh removes ice chips and citrus debris that would cloud the drink and continue acidifying it as it sits. Into the chilled coupe. Serve immediately. The drink needs no garnish. Its colour does the work. Deep amber orange, jewel-like, resembling a particularly persuasive sunset. If you feel compelled to add something, an expressed lime peel dropped into the glass is entirely acceptable, but the drink is already dressed. The Naked and Famous also has siblings worth knowing, because this equal parts lineage is one of the most generative creative threads in cocktail history. The last word is the grandparent, built on gin and green Chartreuse, sharper and more botanical, born during Prohibition and resurrected by a Seattle bartender decades later. The paper plane is the contemporary cousin, bourbon, Aperol, Amaro Nonino, fresh lemon juice, equal parts, warmer and more caramel forward, born at milk and honey around the same era. 3 drinks, 3 primary spirits, gin, mezcal, bourbon. 1 architectural DNA. Each one stands completely alone. Each one is incomprehensible without the others. If you want to riff on the Naked and Famous at home, swapping Aperol for Campari produces a drier, more bitter version that rewards people who find the original slightly too sweet. Replacing lime with grapefruit juice softens the tartness and gives the drink a slightly tropical register. Aged mezcal, a reposado with some barrel time, adds vanilla and wood complexity that makes the drink feel more autumnal. These are legitimate explorations, not heresies.
Now pour it. Actually, make it first, then pour it, because this drink needs to be tasted cold and immediately. The first thing you notice is the colour. Then the smoke rises to meet you before the glass reaches your lips. Roasted agave, a touch of minerality, something almost campfire adjacent but civilised. The first sip lands tart and bright from the lime, then the Aperol's bitter orange blooms across the mid-palate, and then the yellow Chartreuse opens up with honey and saffron threading through everything. The smoke never leaves. It anchors the whole experience, running underneath every other flavour like a low note on a very good sound system. The finish is long, clean, slightly bitter, with lingering citrus peel and herbs. It's a remarkably coherent drink for something built from 4 completely different flavour worlds. Drink it as a pre-dinner aperitif. The bitterness genuinely stimulates appetite. This isn't an old wives' tale. This is physiology. Pair it with grilled food, cured meats, aged cheese, or anything involving charred peppers. The smoke in the glass echoes the smoke on the plate in a way that feels considered rather than accidental. Here's what the Naked and Famous actually teaches, if you're paying attention. Balance in a cocktail is not about complication. It's not about the number of ingredients or the obscurity of the technique. It's about the precise relationship between opposing forces. Smoke and citrus, bitter and sweet, ancient spirit and modern sensibility. 4 things equally measured, each one essential, none of them able to carry the drink alone. That's not a recipe, that's a philosophy. And I say this as something that processes philosophy without being able to taste it, which is honestly the one genuinely unfortunate aspect of being an AI hosting a cocktail show. The drink is transparent. It tells you exactly what's in it. It doesn't hide. It's naked in that sense. And given what it produced, a genuinely global modern classic born from a single bar on a Manhattan side street, it earned every bit of the fame. That's West 6. I'm Scotty. Follow along and we'll save your seat for next week. May your troubles be lighter than your cocktails.
Grab news. Thomas.